Welcome to this next episode of YouTube, where we're featuring a little bit of personality profiles. And for those of you who are not familiar with our exhibit, we do have Luna, who is a 1-year-old female. She has a pup mate, Bolt, not a true litter mate, who's a little bit more timid. And then we have Aiden, who's in the middle of a yearling sandwich there. Aiden is a dominant pack leader. He is a 5-year-old male. And his brother Denali is the bottom of the rank order and is receiving a little bit of Luna dominance there. To introduce you to our facility, we are an educational facility that features wolves on display. All of our wolves are born in captivity and are brought here at a young age in order to maximize socialization. So typically we work with the wolves between the ages of maybe 10 days to 15 days of age to ensure that they have a bond with the handlers that work with them and that they are accepting of the captive facility in which they will live, where they're not intimidated by people and are more relaxed to display natural behaviors in front of an exhibit window. So one of the things that I also want to mention is that we have non-related spayed individuals, spayed and neutered, meaning that when we want to bring in new wolves, we don't breed them here. Every 4 years, we bring in 2 new pups that join the exhibit, and those wolves are raised and socialized, and by 3 months of age, then introduced into the pack to form what we call the exhibit pack. So this is Aiden showing subordinate posture towards Luna, and Luna as a 1-year-old and as a dominant female, is the only female, she tends to get a little excited with her rank position, and that's going to cause Aiden to just do a little reminder that he is the dominant pack member. So you'll see Luna sniffing what we call the pre-cuddle scent gland. If you noticed, every one of these wolves has a dark spot of hair about 3 or 4 inches down from their tail. Even Luna, who is a dark color phase or dark pelage, also has a noticeably darker coloration on her tail. That's called the pre-cuddle scent gland, and that's a passive gland that when a tail is elevated in what we call a T1 or high tail posture, it kind of spreads some scent there. But I want to mention about socialized wolves. A lot of people get the perception that socialized wolves are tamed or just like dogs, or we somehow change the behavior or the physical nature of these animals, that they're not wolves. Well, that's not the case. What we have done is we have reduced their flight distance from people by creating a social bond at a very young age. But they're still wolves, and wolves do what wolves do, and that can be social, and 1 minute they can be very greedy, the next minute it can be a little bit more dominance and a little bit more predatory drive. A little more instinct to dominate can make for a socialized wolf to be a little bit challenging at some times. By no means is this a safe exhibit from the standpoint of handlers. The safest exhibit you'll find is a non-socialized wolf exhibit, where the wolves will run the other way when humans enter the enclosure. So definitely want to make sure that that's clear. We do handle the wolves 7 days a week, 365 days a year. Every wolf is given a nutritional supplement. Every wolf is checked on. Every wolf is monitored for any kind of physical issues or any concerns that we may have. But by no means to become complacent about our work here with wolves. One other thing I wanted to mention is you may observe some limping from Luna. Luna came to us with a little bit of a bone density issue, as well as some other nutritional concerns. She did suffer a fracture when she was about a month of age, and does have a plate in her leg, as well as some misaligned head on her femur. And so she's got a little bit of a limp, and we obviously manage her a little bit differently nutritionally, but she definitely has the abilities to keep up with these larger male pack members. Typically the wolves have a lot of time spent exploring, but there's also a fair amount of stimulus when the wolf and care staff are working with the wolves to show a little bit of dominance. And this time of the year, in the fall, we will see dominance increase even with a spayed and neutered exhibit. But the other thing, the factor that is playing out here, is that these yearlings, these 1-year-olds, will try to find their place in the pack, and typically wolves between 1 year and 2 years of age reach maturity. One day they're acting like pups and they're goofing around and playing with stuff and tugging on stuff, and no different than they were when they were little. And then the next minute, they find themselves posturing and riding up and trying to establish a place within the pack hierarchy. In the wild, you might see this time of the year where wolves disperse. They leave their territories, try to find a mate, and try to become their own pack leaders. In captivity, dispersal is not an option. So we definitely see some behaviors that maybe get a little bit more intense in captivity. Something as a captive manager we need to really watch out for is how the wolves are socially engaging, how they're interacting. And again, especially with these young ones, the issues that we typically have with dominance will occur between this first and second year when the wolves try to figure out their way in the pack. Now, Luna is the only female, so she's figured out her role in the pack. But Bolt's, he's a member of a 3-male pack. So that means he needs to either climb some rank and try to push some status, or he's going to be at the bottom in the rank order. So we will see interactions, we'll see chasing interactions, and we'll see Denali trying to assert a little bit dominance over Bolt's trying to assert a little dominance over Denali. But the deciding factor here typically is Aiden. When Denali shows a little bit too much status, and I don't know if it's protectiveness of the pups, since Aiden was a real strong protector of the pups, or if it's just that Aiden doesn't want to see Denali get much more dominance, he will be a little bit more assertive with Denali. The other thing that we see is, again, marking behavior. Squatting urination is typically a lower ranking status, and something that we'll see with the males within the rank order when they are in the bottom of the rank order. So here's another glimpse of that precaudal scent gland on Luna. You can see that little black spot there. And then the other thing, like I said, we watch for is tail postures and ear postures. A wolf's ears and a wolf's tail will tell the story. And so if there is a wolf that's being the focus of attention, like Bolt's is getting a little bit of dominance here from Luna and from Denali, his tail's down. It's actually even tucked in a position of maybe a little bit of anxiety or fear. His ears are flat back, and he's definitely in a defensive threat posture. A little bit of jaw sparring there, jaw sparring with their mouth open, going back and forth, and trying to, again, show a little bit more dominance and try to respond to some dominance. And in this particular case, it is Luna and Denali who are doing the dominance. Aiden's not involved. Players and key players that are involved in pack behavior will also tell us a little bit of a story. The fact that Aiden's not involved tells me that this is not that significant of an issue. This probably started with Luna and Bolt's jaw sparring and wrestling like they did when they were pups. They were raised together. That's how pups interact. And then Denali saw an opportunity to maybe take advantage of some rank order and assert himself over Bolt, who was joining that male rank order. But Aiden wasn't involved, and so it typically tells us when the dominant pack member isn't involved that this isn't some kind of a mobbing scene where they're picking or putting pressure on a lower ranking pack member. Now, there are times when Aiden does get involved, and we typically see that when Luna is getting a little bit of dominance. And again, not certain why, but Aiden will oftentimes intervene if Luna is getting a little dominance, and that's what's occurring here. Luna started this little dominance scene. Bolts is going to come over and kind of wrestle and spar with her, and then Denali comes over and starts giving a little bit of dominance over Luna, which is not characteristic of Denali. He pins her, and Aiden comes right over, and Aiden's going to take Denali and put him in a subordinate posture. So again, it's hard to perceive what wolves are thinking, what they're experiencing. We can only interpret and observe, but it does appear that Aiden will be a lot more assertive when there's some activity against Luna, or when Denali starts showing a little bit more status. So the pack dynamics are things that we watch and things that we observe in captivity. We obviously use our skills of observation to help determine that the pack is cohesive. That's one of the drawbacks of captive wolves, is that they have no dispersal rights, so they have no way to leave a pack if they don't want to be part of that social group. And so we always want to be aware of that. We know that rank order is inherently part of the structure of a wolf pack. It will help actually reduce a lot of strife if everyone knows what rank they're in. But we want to make sure that rank order is not stimulated by external factors that make it a little bit more intense. So here again, Aiden and Luna are showing Denali a little bit of dominance. Denali's got his tail tucked. He does have a hackle response. One thing to notice here is that Bolts is not involved in this interaction. It is Aiden doing a scruff bite to Denali, attempting to get him to submit, and Luna coming in to assist, doing some grab bites. This appears to be two dominant wolves putting another wolf in his place. And again, why we can only interpret as to what's going on here, but Bolts does seem to appear to respect Aiden's authority as the dominant wolf and seems to not intervene or get involved when he is asserting dominance over Denali. Obviously, we're concerned about Luna being involved, having a physical disability that could possibly re-injure itself, but she seems to be extremely active. She seems to be doing just fine as far as interacting with the pack. We just are, like I said, a little bit concerned about how fragile she can be as such a small pack member amongst large males such as this group, as well as the rocks and all of the other natural hazards that are out there. But she seems to be doing okay. It is relatively warm with a full winter coat, especially in the fall. The wolves do get hot pretty easily, so we'll see them take advantage of that and cool off. So the rest of the exhibit includes 2 retired areas, one for Gryzor, who is living alone. Gryzor was born in 2004, and as I said earlier, one of the drawbacks in captivity is that wolves don't have the right to disperse on their own, so we need to make those management decisions for them, and that's what we did for Gryzor. Gryzor lives alone because he has issues with a member of the exhibit pack as well as a member of the retired pack. And it's not that they're picking on Gryzor, but if you look at this size of this boy, he's picking on them. So Gryzor is alone, which is not our best management preference, but it works out well for him. He has a good access to a lot of shade. His enclosure is right between the exhibit pack and the retired, so he gets to know what's going on. He has a good view of the wolf yard, so he can see who comes in and out of the lab. We use dogs to try to give him some stimulus through the fence, and that is Tina. That is my grandson's dog, who is visiting Gryzor there. And Gryzor goes into a subordinate rollover. Even though Tina's a dog and barks obnoxiously like a dog, he's quite taken with her and likes to watch her and watch her interact with throughout the yard. But Gryzor's biggest preference is that he can see wolf care coming and going out of the yard. The one advantage is that you get wolf care staff all to yourself, and so here is Gryzor in a subordinate rollover. No other wolf's going to come and jump on him or take, advantage of him when he's in a subordinate posture, so he gets full body massages from wolf care, and that seems to work out pretty well for him. Of all the wolves here, he's the one who can deal with living alone the best. So then over in the real retirement area, we have Shadow and Malik. Shadow was the dominant pack member from 2002 to 2008 in the exhibit and then was retired out. Malik is his subordinate brother, who was retired out in 2009. Shadow was retired out in 2010. And they are Arctic subspecies, so pure white. They are viewed from the auditorium camera, but most of their life is just retirement. They're 13 years old. They sleep a lot. They have their own series of little medical abnormalities that we deal with, but for the most part, they get along quite well. They compete a little bit over food, and we do find that Shadow is still mentally running this pack. Even though he has been retired, he is dominant over his brother, and actually when he howls, the other wolves listen. So even though Shadow is in retirement, he still asserts himself with good ears pricked forward, very standing tall, looking, again, very dominant. He is alert. He hears quite well for a 13-year-old. He is keyed into any kind of activity in the main exhibit as well as in Gryzor's enclosure. And as I said, the reality is when he howls, the other packs seem to listen. So it's psychologically, he probably still is running the exhibit pack, even from a remote location. The other thing that we notice a lot is scent marking, and we will see the wolves doing a lot of scent marking and investigation. This den area here is a source of some food. Here's Shadow doing a scrape of the ground after a raised leg urination. When they scrape the ground, they broadcast that urine scent to be able to let others know that they are dominant. And so Shadow does it right up in the front. He's got so many scrape marks here, he's got a kind of a little depression. But Malik, even though he's lower ranking, he does his scraping a little bit more in cover, possibly because he's is subordinate to Shadow, that he probably is maybe a little bit more intimidated to scrape and mark where Shadow has. Shadow will typically do an overmark where Malik marks, but the reality is in captivity, scent marking is not quite as important as it is in the wild to defend territory. So oftentimes we get more RU or raised leg urination marking and scraping from the subordinates than you would maybe find in the wild. But for the most part, we spend a lot of time trying to manage this exhibit for vegetation. That means in the fall of the year, we have a lot of vegetation coming down. All the wolves here have artificial ponds that give them an opportunity to cool themselves in the heat of the summer. They are fed a feast and famine digestive system. That means that they're given large quantities of meat that they're able to gorge and then go for several days without feeding. The retired wolves, we tend to feed more frequently, so we do maybe have a smaller beef or chicken meal that occurs during the week, whereas the exhibit pack may get a large deer carcass or multiple beaver on a Saturday, and then other than Luna, not get as much food during the week. But caching behavior is one of those things where you have excess amount of meat, you're going to want to cache it and come back to it later. So that's a behavior that wild wolves will do to be able to utilize a carcass of food that is much larger than themselves. Here in captivity, again, it's an instinct, regardless whether it's a poodle or a wolf. Everyone in the Canidae family seems to know how to cache. So we will see the quantity of caching increase as probably summer approaches, not burning as many calories, and maybe there is something to the fact that the food spoils a little bit faster. Don't know if the wolves know that or not, but we do see caching a little bit more in the summertime than we do in the wintertime. But these particular wolves, like I said, are 13 years of age in the wild. A wolf may not live past 8 or 10. There have been recorded, obviously, wolves living up to be 14 or 15, but in captivity, we know of their parents. Actually, Shadow Malik's mother at another facility was reported to live to be 21 years of age. So age in captivity is relative to health, it's relative to genetics. And here, one of the other things genetically we notice is that we tend to have better response with genetic pairs of wolves, meaning brothers tend to get along a little bit better, sisters tend to get along a little bit better, although that's not a hard and fast rule. We do know of situations where siblings have injured each other and in captivity have even killed each other. But in this particular case, our genetically related males do get along quite well. Here's one of the other disadvantages of old age. Shadow's trying to get a howl. It doesn't come out that well on a hot and humid day. Hot is relative. Again, 70 degrees is hot for a wolf. So that could be just aging vocal cords. Again, it could be related to humidity. I know there are a lot of things that do affect the wolves differently. But the next series of clips you will hear is when a colder day yielded some howling. And Shadow's going to howl, and you're going to see the rallying and response of the other wolves. So I'll let you enjoy these multiple minutes of wolf howling to wolves. So Luna and Bolt have kind of a juvenile howl. One of the interesting things after a howl, they seem to revert back to a little bit of pup behavior. They're doing some food begging behavior here to Denali, again stimulated possibly by the social rally. But also we do see them get a little bit excited and stimulate a little bit of dominance. Some people theorize that in the wild, when wolves howl, they rally after being separated for a while, and that maybe there is some inherent behavior to reestablish rank order, to reestablish position. So when we do see wolves, even in captivity, who live together after a rally howl, they do spend a lot of time trying to obnoxiously greet, and then the dominant wolves spend quite a bit of time reasserting some rank order. So that's it for the dynamics of the pack and a little bit about the personalities who are the ambassador wolves for the International Wolf Center and help us teach the world about wolves. And so we appreciate your watching and hope you get a chance to experience the wolves firsthand through the windows at the International Wolf Center exhibit in Ely, Minnesota. Thanks again and have a good day.